Welcome, folks. My name is Ken Percival. I'm doing double duty. I'm the session host today, so I get to introduce myself. This is a panel session with three speakers. The goal today is to talk about how institutions are doing IT support for the research community. And we'll have short presentations from the panelists, and then the idea is for an open discussion from the audience and the panel on some of the opportunities and issues that people face, and look at where we might go in building a community of interest, a community of expertise around this area. There are a number of reasons why we would want to support the research community. One of the reasons is it's part of our community. It's part of most university mission statements. Our faculty that do all the teaching and learning are also doing research. And there's an opportunity to provide complementary services for that integrated community. There's reasons for the institution to be very concerned about things like data privacy, data security, the retention of data. As we get into more and more big data sets, and that the whole question of research data management becomes a big problem. So there are lots of things that we could talk about in that area. But research is also, supporting research is also very difficult. Most institutions, the governance around the support of technology and services for research is very different. At our institution, unfortunately, it's research is really 800 researchers doing their own thing. The researcher, the PI, is fully in charge of any of the research projects, and there's no hierarchy up to the top that defines good decision-making governance. The time between researcher putting together a proposal and there actually being an award and the beginning of the development of the IT service and infrastructure for the researcher can be a long time. It doesn't fit into our budget cycles often. Different sort of capacity and performance requirements would be going on there. So let's talk about that. I've asked three panelists today to look at some of the questions around, or to answer some of the questions around how they are doing research in their organization, to spark some ideas and discussion on that. So I'll just introduce the panel very briefly. They can expand on their credentials if they want. Steve Cundy from UBC, he was one of the instigators in recommending this session. Keith Jeffries from University of Saskatchewan. I noticed he's just the manager of a new department that is responsible for research, so I thought getting somebody who's on the ground floor might be useful. And Omar Mohammed from York University has been doing this for a while. So I'll turn it over to Steve then to talk.
Sure, thanks. Everyone hear me okay? Yes, okay. So I won't really go into my background at all. I've been working with researchers for over 10 years now, and it's been quite exciting, and I'm very passionate about it. One of the things that we started talking about was why should we support the research community? And we're going to talk about a number of different things, but I wanted to focus on that one specifically and perhaps let my other panelists here talk about the other topics in more detail. But one of the things that I've found and that I'm very excited about is that when working with the research community, you look at the different stakeholder priorities. That could be from the executives level. They want to recruit and retain highly qualified, highly recognized faculty members. Could be increasing the brand, increasing the research dollars, any number of things. For researchers, coming to an institution and having greater access to IT support is certainly becoming in greater demand, and that falls under the recruitment and retention of highly qualified, highly recognized researchers. But from an IT perspective, why is this important? So I was having a conversation a few years ago with Director of Operations for the Faculty of Medicine, and he had mentioned how difficult it was working with the research community. The needs were last minute. It was very difficult to engage with them. They didn't have standard services that could offer. And I suggested a different perspective. One of the advantages that we have with a more mature model at the Okanagan campus, which is significantly smaller than the Point Grey campus, but one of the advantages that we found is working with the research community. You are looking at the opportunities that will be coming down the road. So the research community is asking for things now that the rest of your community is going to be asking for 2, 3, 5 years from now. And this could be around privacy and security compliance, collaboration technologies, visualization technologies, big data, etc. With working with the research community, IT is then exposed to these new upcoming issues, the new technologies, the new requirements. It helps your support department become more efficient, more effective, faster turnaround time. And we've certainly seen a lot of cases at the Okanagan campus where research requests have led to institutional initiatives. And looking back a decade, that was central authentication, that was standardization of Linux in the data center, large-scale storage expansion, so looking at scalability and sustainability of large storage capacity. All of this was driven from the research realm. So from an IT organization, rather than looking at research as after the fact, I would strongly encourage you to look at the research community as what the rest of the institution is going to be needing later. So how do we operate at UBC? Very briefly, because I'm already a couple minutes in. We have a very small pilot underway right now at the Point Grey campus that involves business analysts and collaborations with all of our IT service partners. We work very closely with Central IT Organization. We work very closely with Faculty of Medicine's MedIT and the Okanagan IT campus. We also look externally with Compute Canada and Westgrid and BCNet. And what we try to do is align the services that these providers have with the needs of the research community. And we look at those needs primarily based on data. So we have data acquisition, data analytics, data dissemination. We had a whole project management framework around the requirements gathering around that and how to deliver services, helping our service partners understand what the strategic gap is with regards to those services in the research community. And then finally, we also wanted to look at the system level opportunities. And that can be project management software, document management software, large-scale storage that applies to a large research group. Some of the major challenges with that is, of course, the funding model. How is this going to be funded? How is it going to be scalable and sustainable? The governance issues about scientific's priority over institutional priorities. But there have been major successes as well. And those successes are primarily based around, and I think others can agree, speaking with the researchers early on in the proposal stage. Rather than the researchers coming to IT to talk about what their needs are when they've already been awarded the funds, the greatest gains, the most, whether it's cost effective, whether it's scientific results, whatever that may be, the greatest gains that you can have is through the early engagement. So we focus a lot of our energy around not only providing that consultation support during the pre-award stage, looking at what the broad needs of the research community are, not just responding to an incident request that says we need 8 desktops. We sit down and we say, tell us about your research first, then we'll talk about the technology. what type of research are you interested in? And quite often we can either align those interests with other researchers, we uncover other technologies, other opportunities for them to do their research, because these researchers are not IT administrators. Some of them may want to be, but they're investigators. So rather than having them be IT administrators, in addition to HR administrators and finance administrators, et cetera, we want to work with the research community and be partners with them. So we focus a lot of time and energy on that consultation phase, because for us, that's where the greatest values can be had, and that's where we can gain the greatest insight. I think maybe, Omar, did you want to take over from here and talk about your group?
So at York University, what actually happened a few years ago was about, I would say about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a strategic research plan or a strategy to increase the research at York University. And part of that plan, what came out of it was a research computing strategy where we spoke to a lot of researchers and faculty members in terms of the support that they get from IT. And what came out of it was there was actually very little or no support for researchers. So what we did, and this is more towards our CIO, who is very keen on the academic and research community, was that he formed a research computing, a manager of research computing, and that manager was me. I was the first one in it. And that role was to be a central person within the central IT organization and the researchers, to be the person who deals with the researchers, listens to them, and works with them, right? And the primary mandate of that of UIT's mission to researchers is to basically enable them with their research. And I think one of the things that Steve just mentioned was the researchers and the PIs, they want to focus on their research work. They don't want to be administrators. They don't want to manage the services. So that's where we want to provide value to the researchers in terms of coming up with a central or a research computing platform, I would call it, whereby they are more users than, administrators. And we've made some inroads over the last few years in doing that, and there have been challenges, right? Mainly around funding is one of the key things that keeps coming up over and over. But one of the first things that came out of that engagement and that analysis work was central IT. We don't know what you do, right? We don't understand you, and we don't know exactly what value you could bring. So one of the early things that we did when we set out to doing was building a service catalog or a service, just defining what it is that we can do for the researchers and how do we differentiate ourselves from the marketplace. Because on a daily basis, well, weekly or daily basis, I would say, I usually get the email saying, I can buy this at Best Buy, why should I deal with you? So, and that's a fair question, and it's again showing the researchers the value that the central IT organization can bring to researchers. So, in terms of how central IT at York is organized, there is only one of me. I am that person. So, that being the case, I work very closely with the other teams within UIT to provide the services for research. So, it's not just me alone; it's all the teams within our group. So, and then I work also with all of the various support organizations on campus. So our Vice President of Research and Innovation, I'm closely associated with them, our Office of Research Services, and I act as that bridge between the two groups. So I was explaining to somebody last night, they asked me, what do I do? And I said, I work with the researcher community, and then I also work with our managers, and there's one here in the crowd. So they could be difficult at times, but it's trying to bridge that, explain to our internal teams what the researchers are trying to do. Because if you look at the research work and what the PIs are trying to achieve, and if anybody who was at the keynote speaker yesterday or saw that keynote speaker, you could see that researcher, that PI, he's really pushing the envelope on the computer systems and the infrastructure. So but with that comes challenges, because with a central IT organization, you're trying to provide service that reaches the mass amount of people. and researchers are pretty unique, or they are unique, sorry. So there is that challenge, right, that always comes up, and I was jokingly saying to one of my colleagues this lunchtime, I would really love to talk to the IT support group that supports that keynote from yesterday. I would really like to see if his machine is on centrally managed, or if it's, he's using central storage. I'm betting it's not. I guarantee you it's not. But, they again, it continues to be, what value can you bring, and what value does the central IT organization do? And with that, it's not just providing, servers or storage, but there are a lot of skills and a lot of services that I do offer, which is, project management, the business analysis work, right? A lot of that work is, trying to understand from the researcher what it is the requirements are, trying to help them out with moving their projects along, because a lot of these grants have very tight timelines. You have to provide the information accurately, and then also the cost, right? How much does it cost? So I look back at, things that we were doing about 6 or 7 years ago, and it was, defining services and defining the cost for those services, because the granting agencies require that. And I sat in some of the other presentations this week, and that seems to be a theme where coming up with service models and service management, I think is the official term. That seems to be, where the industry is going, especially central computing. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague.
Good afternoon. My name is Keith Jeffrey, and I'm from the University of Saskatchewan. In just the last couple of months, I've been placed with a small team. We've named ourselves Research Computing because it's an obvious title. And our focus, we are all within the central IT shop, and they were all existing members in the central IT doing research-related support. Our intention is to align and reinforce the efforts of central IT in support of the research community, also to raise the profile of supporting researchers within central IT, reassess the central researchers' needs, because over a number of years I think we've probably lost touch of what researchers need in an aggregate form, and the final piece we're looking at is to try to integrate all the IT services that are available on campus in support of research. So we have these 4 FTE central reporting in the research computing team, but of course we leverage all the services provided by central IT. Our goal is to sort of refocus those and package them and deliver them to researchers. Central IT at the University of Saskatchewan runs about 50% of the IT spend and the personnel involved in supporting IT at the university. We're funded by the 3 of the 4 are funded out of central IT budget, but as I say, they were in central IT before, and by and large supporting research already. The 4th member is actually our West Grid Compute Canada site lead, and he's funded through a CFI grant. The research computing team is part of the client services group within central IT, so that was sort of chosen consciously because research computing, we want it to be user-focused as opposed to platforms or applications specifically. And we find that a lot of what we're intending to do and bracing ourselves to do winds up being sort of in the realm of customer relationship management to the researchers individually and research community. How do we connect with the research community? That's been quite a problem, a big gap at our university. For several iterations of strategic planning, the sort of top level priorities at our university have been student experience or supporting teaching and learning, and our central IT, I think, rightly responded to that. The latest strategic plan is much more heavily focused on research intensiveness across the board, And so we're trying to respond to that. So, as I say, the kinds of things we're launching are an assessment of research needs. We're going to be reaching out specifically to all new faculty members as they arrive on campus with the interest of making sure they're aware of our services from the research support side, that we can help them with the grant applications, that they shouldn't be thrashing around, that when they're talking about grants, that we have central and virtualized services, that we have they don't have to buy their own hardware necessarily, that we have IT staff that can do development or support, that they don't need to try to do that on their own, or worse, have some of the people in their research grant paid to do that sort of thing. One very valuable thing this past year was the VP Research appointed a special advisor to the VP Research for IT. And we found that has been incredible value for opening up the lines of communications between central IT and the VP Research office. So we met frequently and regularly with that advisor, and he was able to convey our thoughts and our directions. We were able to map or compare the services that the Office of VP Researchers does for researchers pre-grants, arranging partnerships, getting the purchasing done, publishing after the fact, etc. And we were able to map our services that Central IT was providing and show them how we were sort of in their language and in their own kind of presentation. We could try to make that presentation, and we find that's been quite successful. For a number of years, probably one of the things that we've been most fortunate with, or has been most effective, is that Central IT has been asked by the VP Research to be involved in the process for all CFI grants leaving the institution. So the VP Research has assembled a group, includes a representative from IT, from facilities management, from safety and environmental people, and we are involved in the first introduction to the people who are intending to make grants, but then we're involved to actually review the grants. We get to flag what we think were problems. We get introduced, and of course we meet with these people to talk about their needs. And then, probably most importantly, Central IT is required to sign off on the applications before they actually go out the door, because it's an institutional award. So, yep. So that's been quite valuable, and because we're part of that process that was the VP Researchers process, then it's become easier to be involved when a new chair arrives or a new center is being constructed. We do get called in early to talk about facilities, to talk about how they might deal with their IT, and before they actually do the grants. What do we see as our major challenges? We struggle with being able to articulate to senior people the return on investment of support for research IT. It's difficult to, I think Kent alluded to it, it's difficult to say support at the grant application stage pays off from the IT perspective 2 years down the road when the grant actually comes through. We intend to sort of follow up with all our researchers and make sure we're aware and can list the pages and papers and publications and things that the researchers turn out, but it's a tenuous link back to the actual IT support often. And the other challenge, I think, is going to be around research data security as part of a sort of a data management plan and data management strategy. But the security of research, it's being accelerated or raised in profile at our university because we have a new ICT security director, and he's pointing out all our problems. So. Anyway, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just,
Yep. Yeah.
just want to add one more thing that, just following up. The way engagement at York University in terms of how central IT works with the researchers, when I first started off, it was somewhat ad hoc, quasi, not really formally defined, and there was very little involvement of the central IT group with the large CFI proposals. So that meant a couple of things that would happen was that we would not be included, and then all of a sudden when the grant is awarded, we get notified when there is a big mainframe at the loading dock saying, we're ready to put it in your machine room, yet we don't know anything about it. So one of the ways that I approached the engagement was by closely working with the Office of Research Services and the Vice President, Research and Innovation, to really tell them or explain to them the value that we could bring if we were included way up in front in terms of the planning and involvement of IT. And I never really said to anybody or to the VPRI group that, central IT must sign off on these proposals. Right? I deliberately didn't do that because I didn't want to come across as being, that you have to go through central IT. But over the years, what has happened is that by demonstrating leadership, IT leadership in one project, the next year they came back to us again and said, we like the work we did in the first one, so can you help us out with these grants? And we did. And then the third year it came back that, they started saying to me that, we'd like all of these grant proposals to be reviewed by me before we go further down in terms of the application stage. So that really helped us out in terms of, being informed of what is coming down the pipe long before it actually hits, and then we can then bring the right resources to the table. And some grants, are successful, some are not, and so it takes time, right, to build that credibility with the research community, and I think that has helped a lot. And one last point about that is that over the last 3 months, we've actually formalized at York the what we call the Research Computing Advisory Group, and that's chaired by our AVP for research and our CIO, with constituents across campus from faculty members and myself, and the library is an important player at that group. And what that group does is basically kind of direct the approach strategy for research computing at York University. And if there are any issues or there are upcoming opportunities, that's the group that we're going to deal with or interface with. So I think there's a lot more structure coming in place at York for research computing, which is good in terms of governance. So that's the one point I want to just add.
Okay, Keith and Omar sort of jumped one of the questions I was going to ask.
Sorry about that.
Around the connection with the Office of Research and that. Steve, did you have anything you wanted to add on the?
Yeah, sure. So
Office of Research?
Very similar. The governance at the UBC Point Grey campus in Vancouver is co-chaired between the AVP Research as well as the Director of Operations for MedIT. However, our CIO is a member, our CTO from the Okanagan campus is a member, constituents from the research community, as well as other research support departments such as the library are involved, and the Office of Research Services. We do work very closely with the Office of Research Services and the VPRI office, specifically our Institutional Programs Office that does all of the CFI financial support for the audits and what's eligible, what's not eligible, et cetera. So we've gone through and made a fairly thorough list of different services that are available and what the eligibility is and what the valuation of those services are to make sure that all the numbers are aligned. So the partnership between the Office of Research Services, which is typically under the VPR umbrella, is very strategically important. And certainly moving forward, this has to be recognized that it's not just an IT problem. That partnerships with supply management, with the Office of Research Services, with the library are all very critical for all of this to come together. So we recognize that and we do work very closely with them at UBC.
Okay, thanks. Let's open it up for the audience. Okay. We take the first question from the virtual community. Research is one important pillar of our strategic plan. yet very few resources are assigned to support IT, almost none. It seems like the higher management does not really know what should be done and how to tackle the issues, even with the Office of Research. Any suggestions?
Yes.
How do you get started?
If you guys don't mind. For me personally, this has been very interesting because one of the things that happened at the Okanagan campus, which was part of UBC back in 2005, was that it was already a very central model. The AVP that we had there was very much focused on IT, so we had a lot of executive buy-in. And even though there wasn't much buy-in on the IT side, on the VP research side, there was a lot of support. So it was one of those getting the IT organization to recognize how research is different than academic and instructional needs. Quite often you'll find them saying, well, we offer desktop support services, we offer storage support services, why is that not enough? Well, it's not enough because you built them for administrative and instructional needs. The research environment is very, very different. Now, I'm not saying that you need separate services. I'm just saying that you need to recognize that the stakeholders, the end users of these products are different. The delivery and design of those services needs to be taken that in consideration. And that was a huge change for the IT department. Now, in Point Grey, because it's a pilot, it's very much a changing environment out there. So it's historically very decentralized, lots of outlying IT departments. As the business of IT changes, so it's becoming there's an integrated distributed model in Vancouver where it has a lot of the centralization of the staff and the services with people out on the floor and placed in different departments to help deliver these services. But again, that's primarily focused on the administrative instructional side. What the purpose of the pilot was to look at, is there a need for the research community? How desperate is that need? And I think we have shown that the need is significant. So the IT department on its own recognized that as part of its changing environment, as part of its changing culture, it needs to take into account all the different services. And then working with the VP Research Office has been a process unto itself. So our AVP research, Helen Burt, whose background is not that technical, we work very closely within the advisory committee to get what the current services available are, recognize what the needs of the institution should be, and where IT needs to be down the road. So that was identifying different things like genomics and bioinformatics, what is high performance computing, what's the difference between research computing, advanced computing, and cyber infrastructure, doing all of that knowledge transfer. And it's a long process, but for us, there's two distinct entities. One is on the research side to recognize the importance of IT, and one on the IT side to recognize the unique aspects of research. So that was my input.
The only one point I'd like to add, and it's basically the same approach, is that getting executive sponsorship, buy-in at the higher level is difficult, very difficult, but I think it's essential. And I was very fortunate that the last AVP of research was a big HPC user, new technology inside out, and used to push the IT organization to the envelope in terms of, this is what we want to do. And the current AVP is also a statistician, a math statistician, and is another big high performance computing person. But that's good and that's bad. Because it's good because they understand HPC, but it's bad because they don't understand. Well, they don't understand, but they're more to research than just HPC. There's a lot of collaboration that is required in the fine arts discipline, social sciences discipline. That traditional research computing, which has been associated with HPC, isn't really applicable, right? And the needs are different. And at York, we have a lot of collaborative research where we collaborate with other institutions. So that puts some interesting perspective on the central services, right? So I don't know if that really answers the how to get it off the ground, but just an approach.
I suspect I'm new at it. I suspect it requires it's an education or a discussion, a process that needs to go on. in the list of services that came down from our Office of Research Services, there was rows in the table talking about pre-grant and partnerships and things. No row in the table whatsoever for the actual conducting of the research. They doesn't seem to be at all what they're thinking about. So we added a table back and added a row to the table saying, well, these are all the things we do during the actual conduct of the research. And by the way, here's some things that we think you should be doing in that area. And so that's the discussion we're on now.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion from the floor. If you've got questions for the panelists, if you have a little story that you want to comment on, then I throw up some questions here. If you just have a question for the panelists, just speak it out, and the panelists can, or I will mention questions, but we need to think of our virtual community. So if you want to talk a little bit, I've got a microphone I can give you.
I'm interested in the first question being answered up there. What core services should central IT provide to researchers? And if you can be specific about, we provide this document management solution for this use case. We provide this kind of software license. Here's the absolute minimum we provide to all, which is common across all research projects.
Can I go first? All right. So the core services that we provide to researchers are predominantly on the collaboration side, not the HPC side, mainly because we are partnered with SharkNet. So if a researcher is interested in doing high-performance computing, my suggestion to them is to engage SharkNet, first of all, because it's a free service, it's shared, and we have a link to SharkNet. In the collaboration space, there's no one app that does everything, okay? And what we've done over the years is we've worked with ORAN on their collaboration platform, mainly because it offers a platform that the researchers can use to collaborate with other institutions and not tied to our central authentication system. And then we've also had experience with various wikis at York, different incarnations of it. But one of the things that we've kind of worked towards now is Confluence, just to be very specific, in terms of somewhat of a document management platform, content management platform for researchers, for their projects.
Do you implement the other tools by that same company, like the issue tracking management? Jira, thank you.
No. And just, we don't. And then some of the other services too are central storage. But the challenge with central storage is the amount of storage that researchers often need is so large that the tariff that we charge for service, they have to justify that. It's very hard to justify that to them. And also it's, again, tied, you have to be on the York data network or various ways. There's some limitations to it. So researchers want to be able to work from anywhere, and then, they're doing a project in Africa and they need to connect, or they have an instrumentation that they're getting data off of an instrument and need to just drop it somewhere. So that's one of the challenges with the services.
Code backup.
Right now, no, we don't offer it.
Well, and addressing what should institutions be looking at for core services? For me, we've looked at it as, we've categorized them as direct engagement, shared services, and training and knowledge transfer. So the direct engagements is the pre and post award consultation piece. For me, this is the greatest value your institution can provide the research community, and that's not just for the production of research, but also production of services and delivery of services in a sustainable way. Storage is major, and then it depends on your areas of interest. For research, it could be high performance computing, advanced computing, scientific support, etc. Yes?
This is the impossible question, but how do we deal with the storage cost of researchers? Because the infrastructure's there, we have what they can use for general storage, but even at 25 cents a gig, which is our lowest cost offering for researchers, if they need 3 terabytes, it's beyond their capability, and we're just stymied on how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Questions about the cost of storage?
Yes. So with the cost of storage for research, this is something that I think we can all probably address, and we probably address it in different ways. But again, if you don't have the opportunity to work with the researchers when they're writing the grants, so you can put the appropriate budget line in there, this is where having the funding and the support from the VP Research Office is absolutely critical, because there is going to be a basic need for storage across the board, and whether that's something your institution believes should be, you know, up to 2 terabytes per researcher or per research project, or whether that's going to be something else, that's up to the institution. However, for making it sustainable, it has to be included, and if you can do that through a service catalog to clearly define what storage is available early on and make that on the research site, make sure Office of Research Services is aware, make sure supply management's aware of all these different things, because researchers will go out and find this information themselves. And if you can fund that core infrastructure so that they can build off of it, so you're paying for the controllers, the services, the warranty, etc., and they can add their own shelves, rather than buying on a per gigabyte or per terabyte basis, there's certain value there, because once you're getting to the larger scales, buying on a per gigabyte basis is no longer cost effective for the researcher.
Keith, do you have a comment?
I guess we've looked at models where we try to subsidize it in one way, so we would buy the infrastructure, and the charges that we would have for storage are really the operational costs ongoing to, you know, to pay for the backups and those kinds of things of the central storage. We're going to try to leverage opportunities. We call it an opportunity. Some of the research data security issues are going to force some virtualization and some use of shared storage, and trying to encourage that.
The tariff for the storage is one of the reasons for the tariff is because if you offer the storage for free, they're just going to use it, right? They're just going to absorb everything, and they're going to continue to just use it without having any sort of, you know. So that's why we introduced the tariff, and it's a challenge to justify that, but if you get it in the very early stages of a grant and you explain to them that this is what this cost is for, you know, you have a very good chance of getting it funded. But with that, you know, I say that sounds like very easy too, but there are some issues with that, because some of the granting agencies, you know, they prefer that you buy a storage array versus a tariff, a monthly charge for storage that you may be offering as a service. And I've had that issue where, you know, we couldn't put the cost in because it wasn't eligible from CFI. So there is that, and then also the other thing that's coming out of the storage, and it leads back to something that Steve mentioned, was data management, and so data management in terms of the content, what the researchers are storing. You know, more and more controls, privacy controls, compliance controls are coming in place, especially from the tri-councils. So they're slowly realizing that buying that disk drive from Best Buy is not so much a good thing, because the data they're just storing on there. So that's one of the approaches that I would take.
If I could just add one thing in there that I'm looking at too, is if you get down to the detail of what the storage requirements are of researchers, I think we have to look at different technologies to deliver to the researcher. There's a whole bunch of our data that is in some research areas is older past data that they want accessible online, but they don't need the performance in that. And so we're really looking at archival storage. Something slow, you know, some reliability, gets backed up once to the cloud or something. So we need to look at some different offerings than what we do for the performance at mini grids, for example. Question, Jay?
Yeah, can I presume and ask for a small soapbox for a moment? Sorry, for those of you who don't know, I'm Jay Black. I'm the CIO at Simon Fraser. I'm also involved with Cuccio, but the relevance for this is that I'm co-chairing a national activity called the Leadership Council for Digital Infrastructure, and we're looking at what does it mean to provide modern digital infrastructure for research and education and innovation in the country. We have at the council, which in fact is meeting on Thursday here, we have all of the players at the table. We have the president of SHRC representing all the granting councils. We have CFI. We have the CEO of CANARIE. We have the CEO of Compute Canada. We have the other co-chairs of VP Research. We have the head of CARL, the Canadian Association of Research Libraries. So there is some movement there, and a couple of comments. One is, I had a call with David Barnard, who's the president of University of Manitoba and who is honorary co-chair for some of this. And he framed the problem as, if we're going to provide digital infrastructure for research that is competitive on an international scale, we have to collaborate differently. Everybody, from the granting councils to the formal organizations to the informal organizations to the research support people within each institution, because almost none of your significant research projects only involve a researcher at your institution. I can almost guarantee that. A larger fraction of them would involve somebody else in Canada, and many, many, many of them involve somebody else somewhere around the world. Canada's a decade behind compared to other jurisdictions in large-scale infrastructure, whether it's large-scale storage, large-scale compute, and we need to change the story. So I'm on a big soapbox about that, but are there opportunities for institutional shared common services? We have to find them, we have to make them. The council's work is really nasty, delicate, silly, stupid political stuff at a high level. This is coming at it from the people in the trenches, and everybody working together with the librarians at your institutions, the data, the metadata security issues, they're all there. But please, let's not make this my research IT support people at my university alone, right? When was the last time you helped somebody at another research university? We should all be doing that.
Well, and I think, so I'm going to cut you off
But I
for just a
just
second.
want everybody to know what's happening.
Yeah, but, so I just want to add, for those that have been doing the research IT support model, and working with researchers, we have been for a very long time. I think the issue is that not with the researchers or with the technical people on the ground, like you said, it's at the higher level. We've already, out of necessity, researchers are leading the edge with collaboration. They have already collaborated on shared storage, shared infrastructure, Compute Canada, Westgrid, all of those are research projects. This is where the initiative has come from. So I think the community is ready for that leadership to come in like you're talking about, to get past the politics, and we're all anxiously awaiting. And in the meantime, you know, the folks of us on the floor trying to work through that, you know, need that executive sponsorship from folks such as yourself to make this happen, to make it a priority, because it takes money, it takes resources, and it takes sponsorship.
Could I just turn this back, Jay, for a moment to you on the last question, is do our local research support teams need tools to collaborate with each other, need some direction, some opportunity to, more opportunities to collaborate?
I'm not sure it needs to make that the simple issue of should a Cuccio-C be started up, that's certainly feasible. As far as what Cuccio thinks the mechanics of those things are, all it needs is an interested group of people around the country and a CIO, which you can almost certainly find in on the Cuccio board, to work with the state or just oversee that it is doing something. So that's simple. If there's a will, it can be done easily.
Okay, I think we're running out of time.
I'm supposed to finish up at 1:45.
Okay.
So I guess we're out of time. Just like to follow up on that last point, though, we do have this room for birds of a feather around this. If you're interested in the idea of collaborating between institutions on how to provide IT support, if you're interested in the idea of a SIG, please stay around afterwards, and we can talk about how we might advance that. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for putting that together.
Thanks.